All right, here we go. We are live, guys. This is the Difference Makers podcast. My name is Justin Tamani. I will be your host today. Today, we have with us a very special guest. Today, we have Michelle Aubrey on the podcast. So, Michelle Aubrey is a good friend of mine. She is a life coach for business owners and entrepreneurs all over the world. They range from startups to multi-million dollar enterprises. Ooh, that's a big word. Enterprises. And you typically work with CEOs and some pretty high functioning individuals, right?
I sure do.
Awesome. So thank you, Michelle. Thank you for joining us.
It's so nice to be here, and thanks so much for asking me. It's always a real honor when I get to jump on other people's podcasts, so I'm really grateful. Thanks.
You're welcome. So tell us how you got started with all this, and then we'll kind of tie everything all together here. But how did you get started with the life coaching business, with working with business owners? Where did this all begin for you?
Well, coaching started, I think it's about 5.5 years now. I moved to Canada in 2016, and I wanted to impact people in a really profound way. At the time, I was running a boxing company called Evolution Me, and we used boxing training, like fighting boxing training, as a stress relief and an empowerment tool for women. And so before I lived in Canada, I was living in London in the UK. And our business, our unique selling point was that we trained women outside in the park. So we had classes at lunchtime, we had them after work times around 5 p.m., 6 p.m., and we would have all of these women come from the offices, whether it was in the middle of the day or the end of the day, and we'd do boxing training with them. We used it as a stress relief and an empowerment tool. And from there, I realized that there was a gift that I had to facilitate conversations that really moved the needle forward for people, that got them a little bit more responsible with what they were doing in their world, the way that they were speaking to their bosses, the way they were relating to their colleagues. But I didn't really know what I was doing. So when I moved here, I started looking for a coach and leadership training program. I knew I had a gift, but I was fundamentally aware that I had no idea really what I was doing. So I got trained. I went through a 12-month extensive coach and leadership training program with an organization called Accomplishment Coaching. I went through that program, and then throughout that year, my boxing business started to fall by the wayside, and my coaching business started to flourish and take off. And I've been doing it full time pretty much ever since.
And then when you did the coaching program, was that you were in Canada at that point?
Yeah, I was in Canada. So I moved here, December of 2016. And it was within like 2 weeks, I think I was Googling different places. I went to all sorts of different organizations, universities, which I never knew that universities would run life coaching programs. And within 2 weeks of me landing in Canada, I was in a workshop, and I knew that that was the place for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when people hear life coaching, I think people have different opinions and different feelings about what that means. And you're laughing because I think that you're like, oh yeah, like
Mhm.
I've heard people be skeptical about it.
Totally. Well, I think the biggest controversy with life coaches is that people want the right answer. They're searching for the right answer everywhere, the right nutrition, the right training program, right? Like you see it in the diet world all the time. What's the right answer?
Yeah.
And people want to think that there is somebody with the right answers out there for their life. And unfortunately, that's just not the case. But there are a lot of people that think they have the right answers that will go out and advertise themselves as a life coach, and people will hire these people thinking they have the right answers, and it often doesn't work. So the nuance with life coaching to make it really, really successful is that a really good life coach is really well trained. They have their own coach because they're working on their own stuff, and they empower their clients to figure their stuff out for themselves.
I like your use of stuff.
Yes,
Yes.
I'm being polite.
Now, I totally understand that. And, from having spoken to you before, it's not just a do this, do that answer. It's like you need to come to the conclusions.
Yes.
And I feel like people sell this and sell life coaching as I have the answers.
Yeah. And they're usually really good marketers as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's yeah, that made me think of something. But yes, that's a very good point. And they are good marketers, and they're good at selling themselves or selling their pitch or whatever, but they're not necessarily
Yeah.
sometimes I don't know, like the people I've talked to who have been in the life coaching world, just it feels like there's a big sell and no like payoff.
Yeah, and I think that that can be the case for, I mean, we could use any industry,
Yeah.
right? Like any industry we could be saying the exact same things about, but it's frustrating. I was joking with a friend recently. I was doing the scroll through one of the social media platforms, and there was a ad there that said, "Become a certified life coach for $7."
What?
Become a certified life coach for $7. It's like a
But
week. Yeah,
like $7 period, or like $7 per month, or $7 per day for 3,000
seven
days.
$7 period. There's like an online program, and this is the part that I just said about marketing. And it's a
Yeah.
great business model if you're not, I think, and maybe someone out there could prove me wrong, but I think that if you don't really care so much about results and you want a volume based business, then
Hmm.
selling a $7 program to 100,000 people, pretty profitable business, especially if you've got a little course that you can follow online that's evergreen.
Yeah.
It's a really great business model, but it's not necessarily life coaching.
So you can't become a certified life coach in 7 days.
Not with the ICF, you can't, which is the
Okay.
International Coach Federation, which would be our
Okay.
governing body if we were regulated, but we're not.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, I guess that's probably another factor is people wondering about that, is that it's not like regulated in that way.
No.
But I don't think it matters if you find the right person and if you find the right
Correct.
coach.
Hmm.
With a lot of these professions, like you could have somebody that has every certification under the umbrella, or you could have somebody that asks the right questions and gets the right answer, or not get the right answers, but leads you to the answers that you need.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And really profound questioning usually comes from people having done their own work, right? I've been a coach for 5.5 years now. I've also been coached every single week, or at least 44 to 45 sessions per year, every year in the space of that time.
In That's a lot of sessions.
It's a lot of coaching sessions. It's a lot of looking at myself as to why I'm creating the life that I'm creating and the breakdowns that I'm creating, why things not working out the way that I want them to,
Hmm.
because of something over here. And that's my job as somebody who's a purveyor of the work, to be doing my work so that I can support other people to do the same.
Yeah. And I mean, this has predominantly been a health and fitness podcast, and we can just tie that
Mm.
back into like
Yeah.
that's like your CrossFit coach not working out for themselves.
Yeah, well, it would be a CrossFit coach not doing any training or worrying about their life inside of a fitness capacity at all. And if you're a competitive person, if
Hmm.
they have never done any type of training or education around competition or training to compete, then it would be really difficult for that person to be able to sell a service and ensure some sort of result.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, coming back to you and the work that you've done for yourself, you're spending tons of energy, not just on being able to vocalize your craft, but also to internalize it and do the work on yourself.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have conversations with colleagues in this space all the time of um, when my clients are in their really biggest, darkest breakdowns. Sometimes I ask myself, is this something I should have warned them about? Now, I know, because I've been through the gauntlet enough times of realizing some difficult reality about myself and the way I'm being petulant or pissy or unfair or unkind, and being able to take radical responsibility for it. And when I create the same reflections for my clients, I sometimes wonder, I'm like, oh, maybe I should have warned them that it was going to get this hard. Because the other
Mhm.
misconception about coaching is that there's like all these, you see it all the time on I won't name anyone specific, but you see it all the time in big marketing of people that do really big events that are in the coaching space. And it seems really uh, rainbows and butterflies. Like you have these big breakthroughs and then your life's kind of perfect. And that's not really how it is. I mean, yeah, you have
No.
a breakthrough, but then you're kind of on to the next breakdown to generate your next breakthrough. And it really is a cycle of leveling yourself up over and over and over again. And the work that I continue to do on myself allows my clients to have more and more space to have more of that for them too.
I kind of like that. And I tie that back to training and how I train people. It's like it's like
Yeah.
constant peaks and valleys that keep improving. But
Hmm.
there are those valleys where you drop back down, being taking time off from training, injury, whatever. But
Yeah.
almost never do you reset past or regress past where you started from.
Yeah,
It's almost
exactly.
impossible to do that.
Yeah, yeah, and that's actually, it didn't come from me, but it's actually the CEO of Accomplishment Coaching. I believe it was him that said that breakthroughs are unrecoverable, that you can't, like to your point, you can't go back to
Hmm.
where you started, that
Yeah,
you're only ever taking maybe a lateral step to the side and then continuing to move forward.
that's a good point. I like that one.
Yeah.
Okay, so over the years now that you've worked on this for yourself, you've built your business here. How did you go from teaching boxing classes to working with these multi-million dollar uh, CEOs and in
Yeah.
the corporate world? Like there seems to be a little bit of a disconnect there, but not entirely. Like there is a connecting path here. But how did that transition work for you?
Yeah, so I started with coaching the women. I thought that I was going to be a women's empowerment coach. That's where I thought would end up going. And then throughout the course of my transformation as a coach, actually started attracting a lot of very successful people. And these people were very driven. They knew how to work hard. They appeared to, the people on the outside of them as pretty confident. Brilliant, right? A lot of people would say that these people were particularly smart, but they always felt like they were missing something. They were missing some satisfaction or some real fulfillment in their lives. And as I was beginning to transition out of the boxing coaching and starting to coach all these other people, I recognized a similarity in myself that called me forward to actually being more satisfied with my own life, which is actually how I started getting into CrossFit, which is the world in which I met you in. That there was something missing about my relationship with myself, and CrossFit's actually a fertile ground for where I created that confidence. So I was one of these people that was terrified of going to classes. I was pretty terrified of working out pretty much in front of anybody. So I ended up hiring a coach. I had a personal trainer who I still train with now. And I started with just one session a week. And at the time, even though I was starting to coach these people that were far more successful than I was, I recognized that I needed a foundation to actually build myself forward. And just to be clear, at this point, I didn't know that I would be coaching multimillionaire CEOs.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't actually even a direction that I thought that I was going to be going. At this point, I'm still thinking that I'm going to be this coach for women. But what I needed to create was some non-negotiables that I empowered to get me to where it was that I thought that I wanted to go. And that was a personal trainer, I needed to pay for rent, needed to have a therapist, good food, those sorts of things.
Good food is key.
Good food. Yeah, exactly. Instead of just eating like eggs and bread all the time, which was a part of my story at one point. But the grit and the determination that it took from starting off, learning how to train as a CrossFit athlete and dialing in my nutrition and doing all of these sorts of things that made me have a better life started to give me this feeling of satisfaction and fulfillment in my life that ultimately came from transforming my relationship with myself. Because if I thought that I was worth something, like a personal trainer and this lifestyle where I didn't see training as a luxury, but something that I wanted to work for so that I could have no matter what, it gave me and I don't know what the X factor would be, but it gave me something that I didn't have before. Maybe it was more self-love or self-confidence or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that foundation is what started the transition into starting to coach some of these people that had achieved massive success. Well, I think I want to check. Is that starting to paint a picture as to how I got into it?
Yeah, I think so. I
Yeah.
think it all started. A lot of this just comes back to you starting with yourself and then building from there.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, absolutely.
a lot of the points that you've made have been, I worked on this myself. I worked on things that I needed to be successful first, and
Mhm.
then that allowed me to be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was actually something that you said earlier on. was if you find the right coach for you,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to get what it is that you needed. And that was what I found. It wasn't even just about finding the right thing. It was getting the fit for me that I was willing to empower so that I could create what it was that I wanted. And that in of itself is something that I take into working with my clients. So, whether they're people that are really into sports and fitness, or they're some kind of athlete, as well as creating these massive businesses, that becomes the point in which we're talking about what are you willing to empower to create the success that you want to experience in your world.
Yeah. And this can apply to everything. Like you just said, like this isn't just business. This is every person in every situation.
Yeah, whether you're a parent, whether you run a successful business, whether you're just starting out. I think anytime that somebody's willing to start something new, to start at the bottom, to essentially suck at something, to learn, to fail and start again, I think that there's a lot of courage in that, right? Like somebody that's built a massive amount of success and they're in their comfort zone with where they've created, are they willing to step out of that and create something brand new?
That's a really hard thing to do. And I think there's a lot of fear in that for people.
Yeah, absolutely. There is.
Do
Starting
you
at the yeah, go.
Sorry, no, what were we saying?
I was going to say that starting at the bottom is something that I don't think that we give ourselves. I don't know whether it's enough self-awareness or enough grace for, but in my experience of people starting something new or sucking at something is the way that I like to describe it. I don't think we recognize that that's what we're doing. We think automatically, maybe without this being like a conscious sentence, that if we're doing something and we're meant to be good at it, we should be good at it right away.
Yeah.
Just doesn't work like that.
No, it doesn't work like that at all. But I think we always have this high expectations of ourselves of like we expect to be good at this skill, movement, job, whatever right away, even though we kind of have no business being good at it or we have no foundation for being good at it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, people can come into that in any walk of life. If it's a job working in construction or if it's somebody who's, was a former varsity athlete who's starting a new sport, like there are different building blocks that people have, but they're not going to necessarily get you to the highest floor right away. You're going to probably start at the ground floor, or we're going to start somewhere in the middle and have to build up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, with that and with people who have like high expectations like that, I mean, you're working with, that you're dealing with, how do you cause that reset for their thought process in order to be able to grow?
Yeah, it's a great question. The way that I work is by showing people what it is that they're doing by reflecting how they're being about stuff. So I'm trained as an ontological coach. Ontology is just a fancy Greek word for the study of somebody's being. So you might look at that as behavior, but with that particular behavior, it comes with a certain energy. An easy way that I like to describe it is you and all of the people that are listening have probably been in the experience where someone has been late for something that they were involved in. And that somebody has said, "Hey, I'm so sorry for being late." But there's this residual feeling of, I don't actually think they care that they're late. And they're just saying it because you're meant to be apologetic for being late when you should have been here on time.
Mm-hmm.
And that experience, when the thing that they're doing doesn't actually match up with the way that they're being, is the thing that I reflect to people. So, for example, if somebody was, it's an experience that I have all the time, and people come to me to create this shift. So, for example, really successful business owner, family, kids, knows exactly what there is for them to do to have more time on their hands. They want more freedom in their life. And they keep saying, I know what there is to do. I don't know why I'm not doing it. And so the opportunity for me to do is to reflect what they're saying. It's like, did you hear what you said? Well, I said, I know what to do. I'm just not doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a real like basic example, but from them saying, I just not doing it. Well, what do you see that there is for you to do? Well, then they might do it. Then we might create some accountability by when will you do the thing? And it starts to show them as they go out into their world outside of the sessions that I have with them. They start to see the way that they're acting in their life, and they get to bring back more information. Like, well, I went to do it and I had this thing in my head saying, you're going to fail at this. Why would you try? And then we start working on that. And it takes on a snowball effect of people really starting to take a look at why they're not doing the things that they know to do. And it's usually because of something that they feel is lacking in themselves, or that isn't right with them, or the way that other people are going to perceive, and things that they're going to be suspected for. So they get in their own way.
A lot of this is around sabotage and like self-defeating thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're almost always subconscious until you start facing them in a way that has you take a look at them. And you have to know to look for them as well.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
And I think that I think for a lot of people is a very hard thing to do, because a lot of things they do are unconscious, where they're not ready to look for a problem because they don't think there's a problem.
What's up, guys? Justin here. I'm really sorry to interrupt the show, but we're here to talk about something special. This is to talk about Bionic. Bionic is a first of its kind AI-based motion tracking mobility test that's designed to show you what your body is really doing. We've designed 7 unique tests that show you your range of motion for different joints throughout your entire body and how they work together. Once you're done the test, you'll be given a body map score, which breaks down your entire body and their different range of motion. From there, the WODProof app will also design a mobility program specifically tailored to your needs and the things you want to improve. I can't wait for you guys to try out the test. Go download the WODProof app today, start your free 7-day trial, and try Bionic today. All right, guys, back to the show.
Or they know that there's a problem and they are in denial for themselves. This is something that I say about adults all the time, is that there are no consequences for us. For example, you could say, on Monday, I'm starting a diet.
Mm-hmm.
And on Monday, if you don't start the diet, what's going to happen? Nothing. Nothing will happen. Yeah. Where if you're at home and you're a child and you're living with your parents, and your parents say, I need you to clean your room by the end of day on Monday, and it's not done, there are usually consequences. And so kids will, and obviously this is not the way that it always goes, but if there is a consequence, kids are typically going to do it, especially if the consequence is bad enough. Yeah. But us as adults, we don't typically put in enough consequences for us to do the thing that is uncomfortable, or that we don't feel like it, or it isn't a habit yet. So we don't do it.
Yeah. Huh.
And those things that we don't do it's the result of what we were just describing.
Yeah.
What does it mean about me? Well, if I do it and it turns out a certain way, what will people think or suspect about me? And I have no doubt that people in competition and sports such as CrossFit would see that all the time. Anybody that's just been going to classes in a CrossFit box and then they want to start going to the open and competing, I can only imagine the type of things that they're thinking. And then for them to go to a live competition. And then when you think about elite athletes, there's things that the people that are going to the CrossFit Games, that there's things that they know that they need to do, whether it's in their marriage or their personal lives or with their parents, that they probably aren't doing because it's not in their wheelhouse. It's not their habit, whatever that might be.
So much to digest there.
Where do you want to start?
Oh, yay. So, no, but those are all very good points. And not to just tie everything back to CrossFit. This is very much just every aspect of life, but like what you said is very true. I think it's a lot of the self-sabotage and a lot of the self-doubt as to why somebody wouldn't make that first step, or, something as simple as, oh, I only did 2 of the 3 workouts in the open, so I don't know how I actually did.
Yeah, 100%.
Just something like that, where like, oh yeah, like I stubbed my toe that day, so I just decided to push it off. But I would have done this, and then that would have put me about this placement.
Yeah.
Because, like I've worked in a CrossFit gym. I've worked around CrossFit gyms for the last 10 years. And you see that a lot. And not just from your average Joes in the open, but you see that from the people who are highly competitive, who don't necessarily, I think a lot of it is they're afraid to be compared to their peers or
Mhm.
afraid to see what that direct comparison is like in that competitive environment.
Yeah. Yeah, and another one that I noticed too, especially this year with all the competitions that have been going on, is the the level of vulnerability that people will not allow themselves to experience by showing that they really care about how they do, even
Yeah.
in a competition such as the Open. Like,
Yeah.
God forbid you should care too much or actually train for the Open, even if you're going to come 555,000th in the scale division.
Hmm.
But for some reason there is this piece about protecting our, it's like protecting our humanity by making out like we don't really care when we really do. And I think the less that somebody seems to care about it, the more they probably seem to care, or the more they actually care.
I think the more they actually care is a very
Yeah.
valid point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
And that's a really interesting one too. And I'm sure you can kind of do a little quick self diagnosis of everybody listening, or everybody listening can do a little self diagnosis of themselves
Hmm.
to see like if that's a true statement or not. Because I know for a fact that there's lots of people listening who that's a very true statement for.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just to protect our feelings. People,
Yeah.
it's, um, yeah, I mean, vulnerability is like a massive conversation that we could get into as far as the level of willingness that we're actually going to let somebody see us care about something or fail at something or even be really great at something. Self
Yeah.
sabotage isn't just to make sure that you don't suck. Self sabotage comes in when you don't want to be really good at it, say something as well.
Okay. Go into that more.
Well, it occurs on all ends of the spectrum. Like you could be the most talented individual. Okay, well let's use CrossFit for example, and you and anyone else listening may know someone like this.
Hmm.
Genetically really talented. Maybe they've been really experienced in the sport. They've done a bunch of other athletic endeavors, but they just won't get their nutrition right. They want to eat KFC or Wendy's, or they want to eat tacos every single day, and they won't dial it in so that they can actually create the performance that would be congruent with the level of athleticism that they have or the
Hmm.
potential that they have. There is this fear of being really, really great at something because then there's only one way to fall. That's one part of it. Some people don't want the light on them because, again, I keep going back to this, and it's really is the basic part of my work is that if the light suddenly gets shone on somebody and then they're at the mercy of other people's opinions and judgments of them.
And now tying back that into with the people you work with in
Yeah.
some of the businesses and entrepreneurial endeavors,
Mm.
do you see that as being a thing that they're also afraid of? Is it a very similar
Yeah.
cycle?
Oh yeah, it's the same. Like there's this cliche saying, "How you do one thing is how you do everything." Now, the isness of that isn't totally true, but there is a parallel that where you do something, you probably got the same or similar sized muscle that you will create the exact same behavior pretty much anywhere else in your life. So, you could look at it. So that same person that we just used that example of, let's say they were also a business owner and they
Hmm.
were pretty good. Let's say they had an income enough to sustain them, but they had the possibility and the desire and intention to actually scale their business and be bringing in way more money because what they wanted to do was help kids in Cambodia because there's an organization down there that they want to partner with or something like that. I'm just being hypothetical and making this up. But it's very likely that that same person that is afraid of being really, really great in one arena may have the same self-sabotaging habits and patterns to get in the way of their business getting any bigger.
Hmm.
And also the other side of the coin is true is that you might be really comfortable being on a big stage in one area of your life, but not the other.
That's an interesting one. Because you hear about, people who want to be the best, like the Michael Jordans, that, and they want to be the best at everything they touch.
Yeah.
If it's cards, if it's basketball, if it's business, they want to be the best at everything they touch. But you're saying now that there's a lot of fear around people who maybe were super successful in one endeavor and are, afraid to fail at another.
Yeah. And look, like, just to caveat something is that there are nuances for all of this. Like, there isn't an isness. Like, if it's just this way and the way that I'm describing it, there are many different ways that people show up in the world.
Mhm.
The one thing that is consistent is that it is always about them. That's the one thing that never changes, no matter what the situation is. And someone might be listening, might be like, well, I'm not worried about the way that I get perceived by other people.
Yeah.
I'm worried about the way that my parents are going to perceive me. That's different. It's like, well, no, it's not. It's always about you. And
Yeah.
it's always a self-preservation thing. We want to stay safe. It's part of our nature. We're human beings and we have self-defense mechanisms for a reason. It's to keep us safe.
So how do we break down those self-defense mechanisms then?
Yeah. Okay. So this is not any particular strategy, but the
Yeah.
first thing that you need to be able to do is you have to be able to recognize them.
Okay.
And the first, and this is a real tell for anybody that's willing to take a look at themselves in this particular fashion, is if you start defending the reason that you're doing anything, get really curious about that thing that you're defending. Really curious about the thing that you're getting defensive about. Because if you're defending it, it's probably because it's at risk of being found out to be something else that you probably don't want it to be. So that's step one, being
Okay.
really willing to actually take a look and recognize the behavior. The second thing is to practice noticing it and then doing something about it. So if you notice, what's an example that we can use? Oh, let's make it something really simple, like nutrition. Monday, I don't know why Monday is always the day, but Monday's the day that we're going to start a new diet.
Yeah.
And then Monday gets closer and closer. It's Saturday, it's Sunday. You start noticing that every single week you're meant to go to the grocery store, but you don't. Meant to go to the grocery store to buy your groceries so that you can do your meal prep or get your food organized or whatever it might be. But you keep finding other things to do. Oh, the wall needed to be painted. I needed to mow the grass. Definitely needed to get a few naps in this weekend. I don't normally nap, but this weekend I needed to get my naps in. Somebody that was taking on this work would start recognizing that behavior and calling themselves out on it. Oh, I'm doing that thing that gets in the way of me just going to the supermarket so that I can get my nutrition dialed in. So then they would actually choose to do something different. And it might need to be something in the moment. Like if you're going to say, I'll do it later, you will always be doing it later. If you think about doing something, you probably need to do it in the moment. So if you start to go mow, you're starting to mow the grass, you're about to fire it up, you're pulling on the little thingy that makes it go. Somebody let me know what that word is. You would stop, you'd put it down, you'd put it back in the shed, you'd go get in your car and you go straight to the grocery store. You actually need to break the habit, because this is what someone would do. Oh, I can see I'm doing the thing. I'm about to mow the grass when I should be at the grocery store. I'll go afterwards. Well, after you've mown the grass, you're tired.
Yeah.
Why would you go to the grocery store after you're tired and you're all sweaty and you smell like dirt and gasoline? So you don't do it. But it really is this like breaking up the pattern and the cycle that you would typically fall into to really change some stuff up. And I could get into so much stuff of how this would typically go. Then your family will start to notice and there'll be an impact there, and you'll need to communicate what you're doing and your friends and all of these other aspects that come into breaking a cycle and a pattern.
This all sounds like, as you're saying these things, I'm like, oh, I can apply this to my life in many ways. I can apply this to my life in many ways.
Yeah. Can you think of one thing, like one thing that you know that you're not doing?
Yeah.
That
I don't
that
want to
you
say it
really
on
should?
here, but
You don't want to say? Okay.
no, oh no, no. Like when it comes to I procrastinate really well when it comes to certain things and tasks that I have to do.
Is there one
And
that you're willing to share?
no. I
Can you
mean,
make something up?
yeah,
Like, can
yeah,
you
yeah,
make
yeah, yeah. I can
okay.
talk about it. There's times where when I'm doing my programming for athletes that I
Mhm.
push it off at times. Okay, like I'm gonna do it after dinner. I'm gonna do it after this, and then I look at the time like, oh, I'm tired. Yeah, and
Mhm.
I put it off not because I don't want to do it. Um, yeah, like maybe it's a fear of it not being perfect, or if it's a fear of it not, meeting the standards I want it to meet, or I just want to be in this really good headspace when I do it, whatever it is, it ends up, I think that hopefully none of these guys listen
Yeah,
to this.
this
No,
is
but
juicy.
yeah, I know, but I think that it's from a place of like, I typically do my programming on Sundays,
Mhm.
and I want my Sundays back. And I've been doing this programming on Sundays for the last, what year is it? Like 6, 7, 8 years.
Mhm.
And it's just like, I should better organize my schedule so that Fridays are my day, or Wednesdays are my day to program for the next week, or whatever it may be. But it's typically been Sunday, and it continues to be Sunday until
Yeah.
I change that.
So what's in the way of you changing it?
Nothing. I just need to go and sit down and do it and block the time off. There's
Well, there
nothing
is,
actually in the
otherwise,
way.
well, but there is, otherwise you would have done it already.
Laziness,
Okay,
procrastination.
sure. But if you were looking at laziness as a symptom,
Mm. I think
what's
it's
on the
just
other
like this
side of
habit
it?
of procrastination of like, this task isn't due until Monday, so I will wait until Sunday to do it.
Yeah. And do you get that same feeling, that same pushing it off? And I mean, I'm going to use the word exciting, but there's like some energy around it. Do you notice that same experience every Sunday when you need to do your programming?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not necessarily different, but the thing that I would provide for you around that is that that's just become your habit.
Yeah.
And that's from something way back. Like, we don't even need to get into it, but that's just a habit that you've actually formed because you enjoy that feeling.
Now that's going deep.
Because this is the thing, right? So we'll stop making this about you and we'll make this about everybody else that does that, because it's probably like over 50% of your audience. Is that there is nothing exciting about doing shit on time. There's nothing exciting about being on time. There's nothing exciting about paying all your taxes on time or getting things done ahead of schedule so that you can sit around and relax.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing exciting about that. But to keep our lives interesting, we do things that create this experience of having an exciting life, because a normal, healthy life is actually kind of boring.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that statement.
Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but we have demonized the word boring a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And a coach of mine that I have been working with for years, since I started this journey, said to me once, "You might consider that boredom is access to peace."
Say that again. Say that quote one more time.
You might consider that boredom is access to peace.
Boredom is access to peace. Okay. Interesting.
Like, what if you actually gave yourself the opportunity to have nothing to do on a Sunday because everything was organized?
I don't know what that would feel like.
Yeah, and it's outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And that's why you keep putting it off.
Yeah. Interesting.
So, would you mind working with me on this a little bit to demonstrate what we were just talking about?
Right now?
Yeah, it's real
Oh,
simple.
yes, yes, yes.
Okay. So, what is one thing, just one thing that you can do to interrupt your pattern of procrastinating doing your programming?
On Sundays or in general?
Just whenever you notice, like that second that you notice the procrastination. For example, you could get off recording this podcast
Yeah.
and you could think, "I'm going to do my programming because I just talked to Michelle and it was inspiring."
Yeah.
And then you start to procrastinate in that moment. What is one thing that you can do that would shake up that pattern?
Just to start?
Okay.
Like, is that what you're saying? Like, just to shake it up? Like, if I just said, okay, no, I'm gonna go and start right now. I'm gonna like write when the next Monday through Friday or whatever for client number 1.
Sure. You can do that, but I would also say for you to actually shake it up, to actually do something specific. And it could be, I get my clients doing some pretty crazy shit, but you could do something like do 3 star jumps and then go and do it. Like, how often do you do star jumps in your living room?
Hey, I might hit my head here, but
Ever? Have you ever done a star jump in your
no,
living room?
no.
Exactly. So you're actually doing something that is visceral, it's cathartic with your
Yeah.
body, where you're shaking it up.
Mm-hmm.
And then go and do the thing.
So you're just saying give yourself something, give yourself some sort of trigger, some sort
Yeah.
of new release, and
Yeah.
then go and do the thing.
That takes like a second. It
Okay.
could be, you know, I had one client once and his wife thanked me a little bit later down the line, not right away. She wasn't totally thrilled about it, but he came to me with the same thing. And what he needed to do was he'd clench up his fists and he would scream for 3 seconds and then he would do the thing that he was procrastinating. He'd actually let the energy move through his body. And that's why I'm saying doing something, like actually do something to literally shake it up. So star jumps, he would go like this, and then he would scream. He's doing something with the energy in his body because it's exciting and it feels cool and it's normal for him. And then he's going and doing the thing that he needs to do, emptying the dishwasher or something.
Yeah. And
You
that
could
was
do
it.
a roly-poly. Yeah, anything like that. It's anything to break the pattern. Now, if you were somebody, if you were a client and we were having a coaching session, you're like, Michelle, I always do star jumps in my kitchen. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well, let's not do that because that's something that's on your cycle that you're used to doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that as a tip, and I think that's a good tip for people out there. Like how to break the pattern is get yourself outside of it.
Yeah.
Like in a completely different way.
Yeah.
That's
Star
awesome.
jumps.
Star jumps. Star jumps are the answer now.
Yeah, exactly.
That's funny. So what does Michelle do for her pattern breaking?
I have a plastic Puree bottle that I use to smash my kitchen counter with. That's what I do.
A plastic Purell bottle?
Puree, like the
Perrier.
Yeah. The water
Like
bottle, and it's
sparkling
like a
water.
big
Yeah.
It's plastic. It doesn't do
You
any
just
damage. My
pop
kitchen
it.
counter is a hard surface of some sort of rock. I beat that up.
Okay. Not
It's
anybody
very
else.
No, definitely not anybody else. And just to be really clear, these practices, if you're willing to take them on, you heard Justin and Michelle talking about screaming and doing other sorts of things. If you live with people in your house and you're planning on doing it while there are other people in your house, you may want to give them a warning. We do exist with other human beings in the world.
Yeah.
So don't just start beating your kitchen counter or screaming into a pillow or whatever it might be.
Yeah. Make sure they know what's coming before you start.
Yeah.
With that, do you think that I mean, probably almost everybody has a behavior that they can identify in that way and associate something with.
Everyone has say that one more time.
Everybody has a behavior that they could associate this like pattern change, this breaking of a pattern with.
Yeah, it could be anything. It could be getting your hair done. I really need a haircut. I haven't had a haircut for COVID's a good time. You know the amount of people that didn't get their haircut that then procrastinated about getting their haircut?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
I had some sweet long hair during COVID.
Yeah, so I was about to say you might have been one of them. I mean, it's something as simple as that. Personal hygiene is a big one. Personal hygiene is a huge one. Yeah. If you're really comfy and you're laying in bed and you've been watching Netflix, you're really tired. Are you the person that's prone to not getting up and brushing your teeth before you go to sleep? Even though you know that you should because earlier you were eating sugar and you may be getting a cavity? It comes down to the smallest things that we just decide to put off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can safely say it's been years since I've put off brushing my teeth before bed intentionally.
Nice.
Yeah. But this is not about me. That's a good point.
Yeah. And it could be anything, right? From like paying your taxes on time to going and getting that workout in or doing that extra work that your coach prescribed you that you just can't be bothered doing. Building that business that you know that's there for you to build because you've been talking about it for 5 years and your friends keep saying, you've been talking about that for 5 years. Yeah.
I think I've been on this kick of like, if I am trying to pursue something, I'm just going to start doing a little bit of it.
Yeah.
But I feel like there is a fear there of like not getting started because you're afraid of failing. And then there's also a bit of like complacency of like, I'm happy with this thing in my life. Yeah. And it could be like, I'm happy with this little thing, but then all this big stuff I'm not happy with.
Yeah.
And instead of like that little trickle down of like, okay, well, this is the first step to change the big stuff. I just stay in my comfort zone.
Yeah.
And I've been on this path of thinking about those things and trying to just pursue them, and just like, I'm just going to start doing it. And you know what's funny is like that was my approach to my photography. Was like, one day I just opened a new account on Instagram and just started posting all my photography and all that. And I was like, nope, see what happens.
Nice.
And that's kind of changed a lot of things in my life.
Yes.
So I think that I need to continue with that pattern breaking in that kind of a way and just starting to pursue things.
Yeah. And this is something else that that might be valuable for yourself and the people that are listening, that if you already have a for sure way that you have broken something like that, or maybe you're really good at starting things and doing that trickle thing, I don't know, but if you have a way that you're successful with, then use that as an access point for the next thing that you're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like little trickly things. I know that there was a period of time when I was in London that I really wanted to be working out. And with the type of job that I had, I really needed to be working. Like I needed to get up at 4 a.m. I needed to be working out by about 5 a.m. I needed to be home by 7:30 so that I could be at work by 9. Like there was the way that it was.
Yeah.
Now, when I sat there at night thinking about the training that I was going to do the next day, the waking out really early, the eating the food, the traveling to the gym, and then working out and then traveling home, it seemed like this big task. So what I did is for a whole week, I just got up at the time that I wanted to get up if I were to go into the gym. And then I ate breakfast, drank coffee, watched a show or something. Then the next week, I did the same thing, but I actually went to the gym and I just walked on a treadmill. Walked on a treadmill for a week. And then it wasn't until the third week that I actually started taking on some sort of programming or some sort of program that I was doing in the gym. And I needed like a 3-week runway so that it wasn't too overwhelming for me to get training. So this was like 6 or 7 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
But it was so daunting for me to do that. And this cycle has been totally broken now, thanks to my coach in CrossFit. But I would do that thing where people would be like, need to get back in the gym again. I need to get back in the gym again. And that's a thing of the past for me. But the way that I actually got myself into the gym was giving myself kind of like what you're saying, is that trickling so that it can turn into a trajectory into something different. But it needed to start slow, baby steps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. I like that. So if somebody wanted to get started with somebody like yourself, what's the best way to start? How do you meet someone like you, or how do you find a coach like you?
Yeah. So there's a couple of different ways. If you don't know anyone that's ever worked with a coach, offhand, I would actually start talking to people that you're looking for somebody. I think that people would be surprised how many people in their world were actually working with some sort of coach, whether it's a business coach, life coach, performance coach, something of that description, and then get word of mouth referrals. I always find that they're the best because then there's some credibility for the coach. And we've already talked about the coaching industry a little while ago. So you want to make sure that you're being safe, and there are some very good salespeople out there. So make sure that you're doing your due diligence, which would look like asking your friends first, talking to people that you know that you're looking for a coach, you're looking to create XYZ. Have that in mind too, of what it actually is that you want to create with a coach. Failing that, get on Google and look around. Like you can go into Google and you get a life coach search, and you can start looking for people. And this is the way that I tell everybody to find a coach. Google search, interview at least 3 to 4 people, and make sure that that person has either been through some sort of extensive training and or has a coach of their own and has been working with a coach of their own as they've been working with other people. And then interview those people. I think it's really important that you are getting medicine from a doctor that also takes medicine.
And you're saying interview them, not them interview you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. I think it's a safe way for people to get into a relationship with somebody that they're going to be safe in, and then they're going to feel like the investment is worth it.
I like that. It's also,
Yeah.
I don't know, I just laugh because that's like dating. You know, you go on a first couple dates and you're like interviewing each other, like doing the breakdown of things.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny.
Yeah. We could talk about that for an hour too, but we won't get into that.
Oh, we don't need to get into that.
No, we don't.
All right. On that note, I'm going to let you go. But where can everybody find you? We have Michelle Aubrey Coaching on Instagram.
Yeah. Michelle Aubrey on Facebook, Michelle Aubrey on LinkedIn, and my website is michelleaubrey.com.
Awesome. Well, Michelle, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah.
And I
Thank
hope
you.
everybody enjoyed this episode. And we'll talk to you guys soon.
Thanks.
All right. Have a great week, guys.